Welcome to the Phil and Ace Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, so today I want you to picture something. Just imagine it's the summer of 2025 and you are standing in the streets of a major resort town in Tenerife.
Oh, man.
Right. All around you, there are these massive, organized protests, like tens of thousands of local residents holding banners, blocking traffic.
Yeah, basically demanding that the tourists leave.
Exactly. They're demanding that the 6 million tourists who flood their island every single year pack up and go home. The infrastructure is just completely buckling. The tension is palpable.
It was a huge breaking point for them.
Totally. But now, look out across the Atlantic water. Just a 50-minute ferry ride to the west sits another island.
La Gomera.
Yep, La Gomera. It shares the exact same year-round sunshine. It's born of the exact same volcanic geology, yet practically nobody is there.
Which is, it's honestly one of the most fascinating geographical and psychological paradoxes in modern travel right now.
It really is.
Because while Tenerife was experiencing this complete systemic breakdown from overtourism, its neighbor, La Gomera, quietly welcomed fewer than 200,000 overnight visitors that entire year.
Wait, so that's a gap of what?
It's a gap of roughly 5.8 million people.
That is insane.
Yeah, separated by a stretch of water you can cross in under an hour. And on this quiet island, you'll find, a UNESCO-listed laurel cloud forest, an ancient UNESCO-protected whistle language, and budget guest house rooms that still cost under $60 a night.
And that deliberate isolation is exactly what we are unpacking today. So for you, the listener, the mission of this deep dive is to dissect a really highly comprehensive 2026-2027 travel analysis of La Gomera.
Right.
We are going to look at the hard data, the costs, the terrain, and the deeply ingrained culture to figure out if this lack of mass convenience, like the total absence of direct flights from the UK, the zero mega resorts, the missing neon-lit club streets, if that is actually a protective feature, or if it's a fatal flaw that will ruin your vacation.
Is the big question.
Exactly. So over the course of this deep dive, we're breaking down the entire picture chronologically. We'll start with the psychological context of those crowds, then move through exactly when to go.
And how to navigate the very specific transport logistics, too.
Yes, absolutely. We'll break down the actual out-of-pocket math from budget backpackers to digital nomads, and finally arrive at an honest, unfiltered verdict on whether La Gomera is worth your time and money.
Sounds like a plan. To really grasp the value proposition of La Gomera right now, you kind of have to understand the sheer mechanics of what happened next door.
In Tenerife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the 2025 protests in Tenerife weren't just some, brief flash of frustration. They represented a fundamental societal rejection of unlimited mass tourism.
The breaking point.
Right. The local housing markets were entirely hollowed out for short-term rentals. Water resources were critically depleted by these mega resorts, and the economic benefits were largely leaking off the island to multinational hospitality corporations.
Right. And just to be clear for the listener, we are just reporting on what the sources and the data say here. We aren't taking any sides on the local politics or housing policies. We're just looking at the reality on the ground that travelers are going to face.
Exactly. We're just laying out the facts. And the fact is, in response to all this, the Spanish government is currently floating a mandatory tourist distribution framework.
Okay. Wow.
And local activists are pushing incredibly hard for strict, non-negotiable visitor caps on the southern resort hubs.
Okay, let's unpack this because the immediate economic ripple effect of the situation is what makes our discussion today so urgent.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the raw numbers, a return ferry ticket from Tenerife to La Gomera is just $94.
Which is nothing, really.
Right. And once you get there, a basic guest house in a coastal village like Valle Gran Rey, it runs between $55 and $75 a night.
It's incredible.
It is. If you map out a full mid-range week on La Gomera, factoring in a nice room, daily restaurant meals, and activities, you are looking at $700 to $900 per person.
Yeah.
If you try to replicate that exact same level of comfort on Tenerife, the math balloons to $1,100 to $1,600.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of the modern traveler. I mean, why do millions of people herd themselves into an overpriced, overcrowded zone when an identical climate is vastly cheaper right next door?
Yeah, why?
It basically comes down to our deep-seated addiction to friction-free environments. Mass tourism relies entirely on removing all geographical and logistical thought from the equation.
That makes a lot of sense.
You step off a plane, onto a waiting bus, and into a resort where the language, the food, and the currency just feel completely familiar.
Okay, so it's an interesting contrast. because Tenerife and La Gomera operate like two completely different operating systems.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Yeah, think about it like this. Tenerife is iOS. It's a closed, highly managed ecosystem designed to be completely intuitive. You just tap a button, and your piña colada arrives at the pool.
Right, no thinking required.
Exactly. But La Gomera is open source Linux.
Hmm?
It's incredibly powerful, arguably more authentic, and completely customizable. But you have to know how to write the code yourself.
You really do.
You have to navigate the ferry timetable, drive the winding mountain roads, and just accept that you might not have a reliable cell signal. If you try to run an iOS mindset on a Linux island, your entire vacation crashes.
That mechanism of friction is precisely what protects La Gomera. But the window to experience it at this price point might be closing, honestly.
Because of the policies.
Partly, but also because the island itself is tiny. It's the second smallest of the major Canaries. We're talking just 22 kilometers by 25 kilometers, with a permanent population of only around 20,000 people.
That is really small.
Very small. And its physical centerpiece is Mount Garagone, soaring to 1,487 meters right in the center. Because the footprint is so small, any artificial influx of tourists could completely alter the baseline economy.
Right, and if the government actually implements this mandatory tourist redistribution policy to relieve the pressure on Tenerife, aren't they basically forcing that influx?
That's the fear, yes.
Does that mean the $55 guest house is about to become extinct?
Well, this raises an important question about supply and demand on a micro scale. The current analysis suggests a highly critical 12 to 24-month window.
Wow, that's soon.
Yeah. The zoning laws and the severe mountainous topography of La Gomera physically prevent the construction of sprawling mega resorts. So the island won't turn into Tenerife structurally.
Okay, that's good at least.
But if government quotas or travel subsidies artificially push even a fraction of Tenerife's overflow onto La Gomera, the baseline demand will instantly outstrip the tiny supply of existing rooms.
Oh, I see.
The character of the island will remain intact, but the budget accessibility will evaporate overnight.
So the urgency isn't about avoiding the crowds because the trails are incredibly quiet right now. The urgency is about locking in the value before the policies change.
Exactly.
Which means we need to look at the calendar. When are those 200,000 visitors actually showing up?
The rhythm of the island is heavily dictated by European weather patterns. High season falls between December and February.
So winter.
Right, and this is driven almost entirely by Northern European walkers and retirees escaping the harsh winters. During this window, those basic accommodations will hit the top end of their bracket, around $75 to $100 a night.
Makes sense.
And those $94 return ferry tickets regularly sell out a full day or two in advance.
Okay, what about summer?
Summer, from June through August, is a secondary peak. But it's driven almost exclusively by Spanish domestic visitors coming from the mainland to utilize the beaches in Veli Gran Rey.
Okay, but the real strategic move, like the absolute optimal time to be there, is the shoulder season.
Always the shoulder season.
Right. We're looking at March through May and then September through November. The data shows that temperatures sit in this perfect, highly active range of 20 to 24 degrees Celsius.
Perfect hiking weather.
Yeah. Prices naturally drop by 15 to 25%, and the trails are largely empty.
Furthermore, the island's microclimates are most pronounced during these shoulder seasons. On an island this small, elevation and wind dictate absolutely everything.
Oh, for sure.
The south and southwest areas like Playa de Santiago and Valley Gran Rey are shielded from the prevailing trade winds. They're arid, sunny, and dry.
Okay.
But as you move north and northeast, the mountains trap those trade winds, creating a much cooler, wetter environment. That trapped moisture is the biological engine that sustains the cloud forests.
We are definitely going to dive into the mechanics of that forest shortly because it sounds like a literal time machine.
Really is.
But before you can hike the forest, you have to physically get to the island. And this journey is the ultimate filter. Your trip doesn't actually start on La Gomera.
No, it doesn't.
It starts in the absolute epicenter of Tenerife's tourist machine, the port of Los Cristianos.
Los Cristianos is a sensory overload, honestly. It is highly functional, completely saturated with transit traffic, and serves as the exact line of demarcation between two worlds.
So how does the ferry work?
Two main operators, Fred Olsen and Naviera Armas, control the maritime route, offering 6 to 8 daily departures. You walk up, pay your $47 to $50 passenger fare for a one-way crossing, and step onto a vessel for a 50-minute journey that acts as a profound psychological airlock.
The visual transition described by travelers is just incredible.
Oh, it's cinematic.
Right. You stand on the aft deck, and as the ferry accelerates, you physically watch the colossal, densely packed concrete hotel blocks of southern Tenerife shrink away.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and face forward, and this dark, jagged, intensely vertical mass of La Gomera starts to loom over you. You see walls of sheer black rock, sheer ravines carved into the mountains, steep terraces of banana plantations, and absolutely zero beach resort architecture.
And then you dock in San Sebastián de la Gomera. This is the island's capital, though capital implies a scale that simply doesn't exist here.
Right, it's tiny.
It is a quiet, historical port town. In fact, Christopher Columbus used this exact harbor in 1492 as his final provisioning stop before crossing the Atlantic to the Americas.
That is wild to think about.
When you disembark today, the contrast with Los Cristianos is jarring. The buildings are low-slung, the streets are narrow, and there is a total absence of those massive, idling tour buses waiting to herd hundreds of people to an all-inclusive buffet.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because stepping off that boat in San Sebastian is an immediate test of your travel identity.
Absolutely.
The island looks at you and essentially says, okay, we don't have a welcome desk, we don't have a shuttle to a resort pool, and nobody's going to hand you a laminated itinerary. Figure it out.
Yeah, good luck.
Right. It demands total independence from the very first minute.
And figuring it out almost universally means securing your own transport. While there is a taxi rank, and a ride across the island to the popular Valley Gran Rey will cost $35 to $45 and take about 45 minutes on serpentine mountain roads, relying on taxis is economically unviable for a whole trip.
Yeah, that adds up way too fast.
Exactly. For almost every visitor, renting a car is a strict necessity. Major agencies like Sixt and Sacar operate directly out of the San Sebastian port, with daily rates hovering between $40 and $65.
Now, I can already hear people asking, why can't I just take the public bus?
Oh boy.
Right? It's a European island, there must be a bus network. But relying on the bus is actually one of the most brutal logistical mistakes you can make here. It's what seasoned visitors call the, I'll just get a bus trap.
The mechanism behind this trap is pure projection. Travelers assume the bus network operates to serve the leisure economy, as it does in Tenerife.
But it does.
It's not at all. La Gomera's bus company, Guagua Gomera, operates on a purely domestic civic logic. The timetable is dictated by the needs of the local residents. So, the agricultural workers heading to the plantations at dawn, the students commuting to the high school in San Sebastian, the locals running to the municipal offices.
So let me get this straight. You wake up in your guest house, throw on your hiking boots, and stroll down to the bus stop at 9:30 a.m., expecting a shuttle to the national park trailheads.
Right.
But you look at the timetable, and the bus left at 7 a.m., and there isn't a return option until 3:00 p.m.
Yeah, you're stuck.
And if it's a Sunday, some of those routes just don't exist at all, so you are instantly paralyzed. And you end up eating a $45 taxi fare just to go for a walk.
And if you try to run an entire 5-day itinerary that way, your budget collapses entirely. The solution requires foresight. Either you pre-book your Sacar or Sixt rental car months in advance, because the physical inventory of vehicles on the island is incredibly small and absolutely sells out in peak season. Or you structure your entire philosophy around being stationary.
Which means what, exactly?
It means you rent an apartment in Valley Gran Rey, where you have beaches, supermarkets, and a few trailheads within walking distance, and you simply accept that you won't see the rest of the island.
Which brings up the second massive logistical hurdle, the ferry timing trap. This one catches people before they even leave the airport.
This is a brutal one.
The mechanism here is simply a misunderstanding of geography and time. You book a cheap flight into Tenerife South Airport, known as TFS. You see on the map that the port is close by, and you assume you'll just breeze through.
But let's map out that reality. You land at TFS, you have to wait for your luggage, you then have to navigate to the taxi rank, and pay $15 to $18 for the 15-minute drive down to Los Cristianos port.
Okay, that sounds manageable so far.
Sure, but the fundamental constraint is that the ferry is not a 24-hour service. The final crossing of the day usually departs in the early evening, typically between 7:00 p.m. and 8 every p.m., heavily dependent on the season.
Oh, wow. So if your flight lands at 5:30 p.m. and you experience even a minor delay on the tarmac or the baggage carousel jams, you are going to miss that boat.
You're definitely missing it.
And if you miss the boat, you are stranded. You are forced to walk into a random budget hotel in Tenerife, pay $70 to $90 for a room you didn't want, and start your vacation feeling completely defeated.
The prevention of this trap is mathematical discipline. You must build a minimum buffer of 2 to 3 hours between your scheduled flight arrival and your ferry departure.
That is such crucial advice.
Furthermore, you cannot rely on buying tickets at the port. In peak seasons and on weekends, the crossings hit capacity. By pre-booking an advance return fare for 2 people, you lock in that $94 baseline and guarantee your passage.
Okay, so assuming you navigate the flights, the buffers, the ferry, and the rental car, you finally drive out of the port and need a place to sleep. Let's look at the accommodation landscape, because the complete lack of corporate branding is wild to me.
It's very unique.
There is not a single international chain hotel on this island. No Marriotts, no Ibis, nothing.
And that absence of corporate hospitality fundamentally alters the economic model of the island. Instead of multinational resorts, the landscape is defined by local integration.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, in the budget tier, which runs $50 to $75 per night, you find casas rurales. These are traditional rural houses converted into lodgings, often situated up in the Central Highlands like Casa Rural El Cercado. Or down in Valle Gran Rey, you find small, family-owned, self-catering apartments for $55 to $80 a night.
I think when a lot of people hear $55 budget apartment, their brain immediately conjures up an image of peeling paint, lumpy mattresses, and a view of a brick wall.
What?
But everything in the source material points to these places being incredibly well-kept, clean, and possessing stunning valley or ocean views. The price is low because you aren't subsidizing a massive corporate overhead, not because the quality is inherently poor.
Exactly. And if we look at the macroeconomic impact of this, it is profound. When a traveler pays $55 directly to a Gomera family for an apartment, that capital remains entirely within the island's local economy.
That's a huge distinction.
It pays for local groceries, local services, and local education. When you pay $300 a night at a mega resort in Tenerife, a massive percentage of that revenue immediately leaves the island, remitted to a corporate headquarters in Madrid, London, or New York.
That makes total sense.
The La Gomera model is inherently resistant to the extractive nature of mass tourism. It is wealth retention through small-scale hospitality.
And it makes spending your money there feel significantly more ethical. But let's say you want to step up in comfort. The mid-range options are still a massive bargain.
Oh, for sure.
For $90 to $130 a night, you can stay at the Hotel Gran Rey right on the seafront in Valle Gran Rey, complete with a pool. Or, over in Playa de Santiago, there is the Hotel Jardín Tecina.
That's a great spot.
It's arguably the most architecturally ambitious property on the island. It's built right into the cliffs, offering double rooms with sea views, multiple pools, and even a private elevator down to a beach club.
A private elevator.
Right. And all for just $110 to $160 a night.
And the ceiling for luxury is remarkably low, which is a key indicator of the island's ethos. On a mass-market resort island, the top-tier luxury suites easily command over $1,000 a night, complete with private butlers and massive spa complexes.
It's not here, though.
No. On La Gomera, the upscale tier maxes out between $150 and $200 a night. That price point buys you entry into beautifully restored boutique eco-lodges hidden in the high-altitude mists of the Garishone region, many of which focus entirely on wellness and guided hiking access rather than ostentatious luxury.
And for families, the math is just as compelling. An active family of 4 can secure a very comfortable 2-bedroom self-catering apartment in Valle Gran Rey for $80 to $120 a night.
That's amazing.
You are a short walk from the black volcanic sand beaches, right near the Spar supermarket, and completely insulated from the chaotic resort noise. But the caveat with almost all of these independent accommodations is that breakfast isn't a massive buffet waiting for you downstairs.
You're on your own.
You feed yourself.
Which brings us to the culinary reality of the island, which is surprisingly robust. Because La Gomera has actively resisted the homogenization of resort dining, which usually requires importing vast quantities of frozen, generic European food, it has maintained a highly active agricultural sector.
The local produce must be amazing.
It is. The deep terraced ravines produce an abundance of bananas, tomatoes, avocados, and papayas. They also produce miel de palma, a unique, intensely dark palm syrup harvested directly from the Canary Island date palms, which is used in marinades and desserts across the island.
And then there is the absolute bedrock of the local diet, gofio. Every analysis of Canarian culture points to this stuff.
Yes, gofio.
It's a toasted grain flour, usually made from wheat or corn, that they put in absolutely everything. They thicken soups with it, they knead it into a dense side dish with broth, they even mix it into ice cream.
Well, gofio is far more than a culinary curiosity.
Mm.
It is literally an artifact of survival. It originated with the Guanches, the indigenous Aboriginal people of the Canary Islands, long before the Spanish conquest in the 15th century.
So it's ancient.
Very ancient. It provided an incredibly dense, non-perishable source of complex carbohydrates necessary to fuel grueling physical labor on an island composed entirely of steep inclines.
Wow.
The fact that gofio remains a ubiquitous staple today, proudly served in local restaurants rather than being replaced by imported French fries, is an act of cultural defiance. It signals that the islanders eat for themselves, and tourists are welcome to join them, rather than the island fundamentally altering its palate to appease foreign tastes.
You know, gofio sounds like the original ancient survival energy bar.
Basically. Yeah.
It's the exact kind of functional superfood that some tech startup in Silicon Valley would try to rebrand and sell for $9 a scoop. But here, it's just part of the daily rhythm. And the cost of participating in that daily rhythm is incredibly low.
Especially if you know how to order.
Right. If you want the smartest dining strategy, you look for the menu del dia, the set lunch menu. In the capital or Valley Gran Rey, you get a starter, a main course, bread, and a drink for 12 to 15 euros, which is roughly $13 to $16.
Even an a la carte, mid-range dinner focused on fresh, locally caught Atlantic fish will generally only cost $20 to $35 per person.
That's a steal.
The beverage pricing is deeply local as well. A draft beer is between $3 and $4, and a strong local coffee is $1.50 to $2.
And for those utilizing those self-catering apartments, the grocery economics are unbeatable. You do your main shopping at the larger Mercadona in San Sebastian or the Spar branches in the coastal towns. A comprehensive week of groceries for 2 adults covering fresh local eggs, pasta, rice, local cheese, bread, wine, and a huge amount of fresh produce runs between $90 and $120.
For a whole week.
Yes. And my absolute favorite data point, a massive bunch of local Canarian bananas costs about €1.20 or $1.30. It's a perfect illustration of how far your dollar goes when the supply chain is just the farm down the road.
And it is worth noting the dining culture itself. The etiquette is entirely low pressure. Tipping isn't a mandatory, culturally enforced mechanism to supplement poor wages as it is in the U.S.
Oh, it's good to know.
Yeah, leaving 5 to 10% for a sit-down restaurant meal is standard, appreciated, and reflects a transaction of mutual respect. Furthermore, the reliance on local agriculture makes the island exceptionally accommodating for vegetarian and vegan travelers.
Really?
Yeah, the traditional cuisine naturally leans heavily on legumes, fresh vegetables, and potatoes, meaning plant-based eating isn't an afterthought. It's baked into the culinary DNA.
So, if we take the $55 room, the $1.30 bananas, the $15 set lunch, and the absolute necessity of the rental car, we need to look at the total mathematical reality of a day on this island.
Let's do the math.
Let's break down the daily out-of-pocket budgets, starting with the backpacker. The baseline estimate is $55 to $70 a day. You split a budget room, you eat one menu del dia, you cook the rest of your meals from the supermarket, you hike for free, and you buy a $3.50 beer at sunset.
On paper, $55 to $70 a day makes La Gomera one of the most compelling budget destinations in Western Europe. But the math requires a crucial assumption that we must scrutinize.
Right. I'm struggling with the math on this backpacker budget. You're telling me it's $55 a day, but we just established that public transit is practically non-existent for tourists.
Yep, the bus trap.
If I have to spend $45 on a single taxi ride just to reach a trailhead because the bus left at dawn, my budget is instantly destroyed. It feels like the island naturally filters out true solo shoestring backpackers unless they buddy up. Is that intentional?
It isn't necessarily a malicious intentional filter against solo travelers, but it is the immutable reality of the infrastructure. A solo backpacker absorbing the entire $40 to $65 daily cost of a Sixt or Sakar rental car instantly pushes themselves out of the budget bracket.
So what's the workaround?
To maintain that $70 day profile, a backpacker absolutely must find a travel companion to split the car hire, or they must severely limit their geographic footprint by staying entirely within walking distance of Valley Gran Rey.
That makes the mid-range traveler the actual sweet spot for this island. We're talking about $110 to $145 a day per person.
That's a great range.
That allows you to sleep in a great spot like Hotel Gran Rey for $110 to $130 a night. It covers two solid restaurant meals, totaling $35 to $50. It absorbs your half of the shared rental car at $20 to $32, and it even leaves room for a $35 professionally guided hike. It's a beautifully balanced trip without any severe financial anxiety.
But the most staggering financial revelation lies in the family of four budget.
Oh, this blew my mind.
The daily aggregate for a family is estimated at $280 to $380. That encapsulates a spacious $90 to $120 apartment, a $30 daily grocery allocation, an $80 to $100 proper sit-down restaurant dinner for the whole family, the $45 car rental, and a $40 group activity.
And when you extrapolate that out to a full week, the total cost for a family of four is roughly $2,000 to $2,600.
Which is very reasonable.
Right, because if you take that exact same family and book them into a standard mid-range resort week in the south of Tenerife, you are looking at $3,500 to $5,000. You are literally saving up to $2,400 a week just by taking a 50-minute ferry ride.
That massive price delta forces a very uncomfortable realization about the broader travel industry.
What do you mean?
When families pay $5,000 to go to Tenerife, they're not paying for a superior natural environment or deeper cultural enrichment. They're paying a massive $2,400 premium exclusively for the eradication of friction.
Wow, yes.
They're paying for the convenience of the airport transfer, the endless buffets where picky eaters don't have to be negotiated with, and the highly structured kids clubs. La Gomera strips away all of that artificial convenience and, in doing so, reveals the actual drastically lower cost of simply existing in a beautiful place.
Man, that is perfectly said. For the luxury traveler, the daily budget is $200 to $280 per person. You take a premium sea view room at Hotel Jardín Tecina for $150 to $180. You spend $60 to $80 on the highest end dining available, and you utilize private transport or specialized tours for $50 to $70.
Very comfortable.
It's a deeply restorative experience, but again, the luxury is understated. And finally, we have the digital nomad budget, which is fascinating.
Monthly burn rate for a long-stay digital nomad is estimated at $1,500 to $2,000. Securing a long-term apartment rental in a hub like Valley Gran Rey consumes $1,000 to $1,200 of that.
That's not bad.
Compared to the skyrocketing rent prices in Tenerife, Lisbon, or Barcelona, it is an incredibly appealing baseline for remote workers.
But hold on, if we are evaluating this for a modern remote worker, I have to question the viability. The data notes that the internet infrastructure in the smaller villages is highly inconsistent, and the 4G network has massive dead zones in the interior.
It does.
If I'm saving $1,000 on rent, but I drop out of a critical Zoom call with my boss 3 times a week, the stress totally invalidates the savings, doesn't it?
That is the exact digital nomad disclaimer. La Gomera is not for the hyper-connected tech worker who requires flawlessly stable, high-bandwidth connections 8 hours a day.
Right.
It is a viable base only for remote workers whose professional lives operate asynchronously. So writers, independent coders, or consultants who can tolerate connectivity dropouts and upload their work when the network stabilizes.
That expectation of connectivity leads us straight into what is perhaps the most dangerous psychological pitfall of the entire region. It's the "this is like Tenerife" assumption.
The mechanism of this trap is pure cognitive dissonance. People see the cheap flight to the Canary Islands, they see the shared archipelago on a map, and they completely ignore the specific physical reality of La Gomera.
They just assume it's the same.
They arrive anticipating a vibrant, energetic resort holiday, and within 72 hours, they experience severe expectation whiplash.
Because the reality is uncompromising. The beaches are black volcanic sand, not powdery white imported sand. There is virtually zero nightlife, no club promoters, no neon strips. What the island actually provides is 150 kilometers of intense, demanding hiking trails winding through a primeval forest.
Precisely. To expect Tenerife-style entertainment on La Gomera is a fundamental failure of self-assessment. It is entirely your own fault if you arrive looking for an all-night party and find a silent village where everyone is asleep by 10:30 p.m. so they can wake up early to hike.
Right. Treating a Gomera like Tenerife is like walking into a vegan restaurant and throwing a tantrum because they won't serve you a steak. It's entirely your own fault.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay, so let's assume you've done your self-assessment. You want the quiet. You want the hiking. You've rented your car. You survived the ferry. You've accepted the patchy internet.
You made it.
What is the actual day-to-day reality out there on the trails? Is it safe? Because wandering into a remote, ancient cloud forest on an isolated island sounds a bit intimidating.
From a purely statistical standpoint, it is exceptionally secure. La Gomera maintains one of the lowest crime rates in the entire Canary Islands archipelago.
Oh, really?
The logic is simple. Organized tourist scams, pickpocketing rings, and late-night street crime thrive on massive, chaotic crowds and transient, alcohol-heavy environments.
Which they don't have.
Right. Because La Gomera lacks the crowds and the clubs, it completely lacks the associated crime. The only minor risk is opportunistic petty theft at secluded beaches, which is easily mitigated by simply locking your valuables out of sight in the trunk of your rental car.
That makes it an incredibly appealing destination for solo female travelers. In fact, it is highlighted as one of the most genuinely comfortable European island destinations for independent women in 2026.
Yes.
The main hiking artery, the GR1 through 2 trail, which actually circumnavigates the entire island, is incredibly well marked.
If we connect this to the broader sociology of travel, the safety profile is a direct reflection of the specific demographic the island attracts. Ecotourism and rigorous hiking inherently draw an independent, disciplined, and highly respectful community.
That makes sense.
The culture on the trails is self-policing. Fellow hikers look out for each other. The local Gomeros are deeply welcoming to those who respect their land. And despite the dramatic terrain, the island is geographically small enough that you are rarely more than a few hours' walk from civilization.
For families taking their kids out there, the safety profile is generally excellent, but it requires active parenting. The ravines up in Garajone are incredibly steep. They are massive vertical drops. You cannot let children wander off near the cliff edges.
Definitely not.
And down at sea level in Valle Gran Rey, the beaches are relatively calm, but it is still the open Atlantic Ocean. The water is significantly cooler, and the undercurrents can be much stronger than a family accustomed to a shallow, enclosed Mediterranean bay might anticipate.
The only major logistical reality check regarding safety is the medical infrastructure.
Let's talk about that.
The Hospital de la Gomera, located in San Sebastian, is a highly competent facility for routine care, minor trail injuries like sprains or basic illnesses. However, it is not a major trauma center.
Okay.
For any severe medical emergency, a critical cardiac event, or a major multi-trauma accident, the patient requires an immediate helicopter medical evacuation back to a specialized hospital in Tenerife.
Does the fact that you might literally need a helicopter to save your life in an emergency make the island feel a bit, I don't know, too isolated for comfort?
It is a totally valid anxiety, but it is simply the universal reality of any small island ecosystem on the planet. The local authorities run the helicopter transfer protocol with absolute practiced efficiency. It happens routinely and safely.
Okay, that's reassuring.
The takeaway isn't to be terrified. The takeaway is to be financially prepared. It means that traveling without comprehensive insurance that specifically includes a medical evacuation clause is deeply irresponsible. A robust policy for a one-week trip generally costs a highly reasonable $30 to $50. It is a tiny premium for total peace of mind.
That brings us perfectly to the emotional core of the deep dive. We've covered the logistics, the math, and the safety. Now let's talk about the actual experience, the highest highs and the undeniable lows. Because no destination is perfect.
None of them are.
Let's start with the absolute pinnacle of La Gomera, the Garajone National Park.
Garajone is the ecological crown jewel, and it is a biological anomaly. It is dominated by the laurisilva, or laurel cloud forest.
Which is what, exactly?
To understand why this is so spectacular, you have to look back to the Pleistocene epoch. Millions of years ago, this specific type of dense, humid, evergreen forest covered massive swaths of southern Europe and North Africa. But when the subsequent ice ages hit, the dramatic cooling and drying of the climate entirely wiped those forests off the continental map.
So how did it survive here?
Because of the island's extreme elevation and its location off the coast of Africa. Mount Garajone acts as a massive wall that catches the humid trade winds blowing off the Atlantic. As the air hits the mountain and rises, it cools and condenses, creating an almost permanent, low-hanging mist.
Oh, wow.
This mist provides a constant source of moisture, acting as a thermal blanket that protected the forest through the ice ages. Walking into Garajone is literally stepping into a biological lifeboat. a living, breathing relic of a world that existed before human history.
That is incredible. The descriptions of walking through it sound deeply atmospheric. You are surrounded by canary and holly and massive ferns. Everything is draped in this thick green lichen, and the canopy is so dense that the light filters through the mist in these eerie cinematic shafts.
It's beautiful.
The silence is supposedly profound, broken only by birdsong. You can explore it entirely for free following the GR132 markers, or you can hire expert local outfits like Tima Trekking or Canaria Natural for $35 to $55 to explain the deep ecology.
And after you leave the ancient forest, the secondary highlight is the evening ritual in Valley Gran Rey.
Yes, the sunset.
Because the valley faces west, it is perfectly positioned to capture the sunset. You have the black volcanic sand, the silhouettes of the Canary Island day palms, and the local fishing boats bobbing in the water. As the sun drops, the light hits the massive, sheer cliff walls that enclose the valley, turning them a rich, burning amber.
You pull up a chair on an outdoor terrace, order a platter of fresh, locally caught fish, pour a glass of crisp, local white wine, and the bill for two people maxes out at $50 to $70.
Unbeatable.
It is an intersection of sublime natural beauty and stunning economic value that is almost impossible to find in modern Europe.
But the most profoundly unique cultural asset of La Gomera, the thing that truly separates it from anywhere else on Earth, is Silbo Gomero.
The whistle language. This absolutely fascinates me.
It is a masterpiece of human adaptation. Before modern infrastructure, navigating the deep, sheer ravines that slice through La Gomera was incredibly arduous.
I can imagine.
Walking a straight-line distance of just a few miles could take hours of brutal descent and ascent. To solve this, the original inhabitants developed Silbo Gomero. It is not merely a series of coded signals. It is a fully articulated language, capable of translating the entire phonetic structure of spoken Spanish into distinct whistling frequencies.
So they were essentially using their bodies to broadcast complex information across massive physical distances. It was the island's original fiber optic network.
Exactly.
They were transmitting detailed data across the valleys instantly, centuries before the internet existed.
By utilizing specific pitches and the natural acoustic amplification of the valley walls, a skilled silbador can clearly communicate messages over distances of up to 3 miles.
3 miles, that's incredible.
It is a recognized UNESCO intangible cultural heritage. It is actively and fiercely protected, formally taught to children in the local schools, and you can witness incredible live demonstrations of it at traditional restaurants in San Sebastian, usually included seamlessly into the cost of your meal.
Which is highly ironic considering their ancient whistling network was incredibly fast and reliable, while their actual modern internet network is one of the island's biggest disappointments.
Yeah, that is ironic.
And we have to talk about those disappointments because the analysis is unsparing about where the island falls short of typical vacation dreams.
First and foremost is the beach reality. If the core priority of your vacation is lounging on endless powdery beaches, La Gomera will actively disappoint you.
Because it's all black sand, right?
Yes. The beaches at Playa de Santiago and Valle Gran Rey are composed of black, volcanic sand and pebbles. They're visually striking, but they are narrow, heavily constrained by the cliffs, and modest in size. The water is impeccably clean, but the physical environment is simply not designed for sprawling beach days.
The second disappointment, as we noted for the digital nomads, is the connectivity. The moment you drive out of the main towns or enter the ravines, your mobile data just vanishes.
It's gone.
For a burnt-out executive trying to unplug for a week, that dead zone is a blessing. But for anyone relying on a stable connection to manage logistics or handle a work emergency, it is a massive, stressful headache.
And the final undeniable frustration is the driving. The topography makes navigation a chore. That 45-minute drive from San Sebastian over the mountains to Valle Gran Rey involves endless, tight switchbacks, steep drop-offs, and narrow lanes.
Oh, man.
If you are a nervous driver, or if you simply resent having to hyper-focus on the road for an hour just to get to dinner, the daily driving requirement will exhaust you.
So let's be pragmatic. If the spotty internet, the stressful mountain driving, or those narrow black sand beaches are absolute deal breakers for you, where should you actually spend your money instead?
There are a couple of good alternatives.
The analysis provides 2 highly specific alternatives based on what you value most. Alternative 1 is for the traveler who wants pristine golden beaches and a cheaper baseline, but still desperately wants to avoid the absolute worst of the Tenerife crowds. The pivot is Fuerteventura.
Fuerteventura is the geographical inverse of La Gomera. It is relatively flat, And it boasts 150 kilometers of spectacular, sprawling beaches, including the world-famous Corralejo Dunes and the vast stretches of the Jandia Peninsula.
Okay, what about the cost?
Financially, it aligns very closely with the La Gomera budget. A mid-range daily budget there sits at $80 to $130 per person, making it marginally cheaper.
And the logistics are infinitely easier. Fuerteventura has a major international airport with direct flights from hubs like London, starting at just $75 one way. You fly in, grab your bags, and you are at the beach. You completely bypass the ferry and the mountain driving. But the trade-off is severe, right?
The trade-off is the environment. Fuerteventura is significantly more developed. It embraces a heavier resort-centric footprint, and it is largely arid. It completely lacks the lush, verdant, UNESCO-protected ancient forest environment and the profound cultural intimacy of La Gomera.
So essentially, if I'm packing my bag purely to lie on a towel, get a golden tan, and read a book without thinking about logistics, La Gomera shouldn't even be on my radar. I should just book for Fuerteventura.
Without question.
Yeah.
But what if you are the traveler who is specifically drawn to the ancient forests and the dramatic hiking, but you simply cannot stomach the logistical friction of the ferry, or you want a slightly higher standard of luxury hotel?
What's the alternative there?
The second alternative is the Portuguese island of Madeira.
Madeira. Okay, I know Madeira has incredible mountains, but how does it compare directly to La Gomera's specific vibe?
Madeira offers a stunning natural parallel. It features its own vast ancient laurisilva forests, complete with the famous Levada walks.
What are those?
They're an incredible network of trails that trace historical irrigation channels carved right into the mountain faces. The ecological majesty of the nature experience is highly comparable to Guernsey. However, Madeira is a vastly more developed, globally integrated destination. It has a major international airport with direct flights from London and Manchester, eliminating the multi-stage transit.
And what does that convenience cost? The data notes that a mid-range day on Madeira runs $120 to $160 per person. So you're definitely paying a premium over La Gomera.
You are.
But for that extra cash, you get incredibly smooth logistics, a much wider array of high-quality hotels and boutique stays, and a significantly more sophisticated cosmopolitan food and wine scene in places like Funchal.
It ultimately comes down to a comparative analysis of friction versus reward. If you demand logistical convenience paired with spectacular nature, Madeira is the clear winner. If your priority is vast, pristine beaches on a tight budget, Fuerteventura wins. La Gomera remains strictly reserved for a very specific subset of travelers, those who actively desire the unvarnished, authentic magic of isolation and are entirely willing to navigate the friction required to achieve it.
Which brings us to the ultimate, definitive bottom line. We've mapped out the costs, the mechanics of the island, the traps, and the alternatives. Now, we are going to look at the 5 distinct traveler profiles and deliver the final synthesis.
The final verdict.
Exactly. Who actually gets the green light to book a ticket to La Gomera in 2026? Let's start with the backpacker.
For the backpacker, the final verdict is yes, but it comes with a strict, non-negotiable caveat.
The car.
Right. From a pure mathematical standpoint, surviving on $55 to $70 a day makes La Gomera one of the most affordable island destinations left in Western Europe. You gain access to world-class free UNESCO hiking, incredibly cheap local produce, and a deeply authentic travel culture. The absolute caveat is the transport mechanism. You must arrive prepared to split the cost of a rental car with a companion. If you stubbornly attempt to be a lone, bus-only backpacker, the geographic isolation will aggressively ruin your trip.
Next up is the mid-range traveler. The verdict here is a resounding, incredibly strong yes. The analysis identifies this profile as the absolute sweet spot for the island.
It really is.
For $110 to $145 a day, you unlock an optimal experience. You secure a great room at the Hotel Grand Ray, you're half of a rental car, excellent local restaurant meals, and professional guided hikes.
And you save so much money.
You're paying 30 to 40% less than you would for an equivalent week in the chaos of Tenerife. And in return, you get a deeply restorative, profoundly beautiful vacation. As long as your definition of a good time doesn't require nightclubs, this is a phenomenal investment.
We then evaluate the family profile. The verdict here is a highly conditional yes. The financial argument is unassailable. Spending $2,000 to $2,600 total for a week in a self-catering apartment is exceptional value for a family of four.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
But the condition is entirely behavioral.
Huh.
If you are an active, outdoorsy family that loves rigorous hiking, exploring tide pools, and is perfectly content building sand castles on quiet, black sand beaches, it is brilliant.
Right.
But if your family dynamic relies on a sprawling resort infrastructure kids clubs, massive interconnected pool complexes, and endless white sandy beaches to keep the children entertained, La Gomera will be a massive logistical disaster. You belong in Fuerteventura.
Moving to the luxury traveler. The verdict here is marginal. You can spend $200 to $280 a day and have a beautiful, isolated boutique experience at a property like Hotel Jardín Tecina. But you have to radically manage your expectations of what luxury means. The ceiling here is very low. You will not find 5-star mega spas with 20 treatment rooms. You will not find a vibrant private yacht charter scene or Michelin-starred tasting menus. It is a very quiet, understated, nature-adjacent form of luxury that won't satisfy someone looking for pure opulence.
Finally, the digital nomad profile. The verdict is yes, but with a major disclaimer.
The internet.
Exactly. Securing a month-long base in a beautiful valley for $1,500 to $2,000 total is a massive hidden gem, especially as traditional hubs like Tenerife become wildly inflated and hostile to temporary workers. The expat and local community in Valley Gran Rey is deeply welcoming.
But the tech infrastructure.
The disclaimer, which we must stress, is the technological infrastructure. You can only execute this plan if your professional life can genuinely accommodate the reality of patchy, inconsistent afternoon internet dropouts.
So we've laid out the hard facts, the price comparisons, the geological realities, and the exact traps that will cost you money. And as we synthesize this entire deep dive, I want you to ponder a final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
Building on everything we've explored today, the massive protests shutting down Tenerife, the staggering 5.8 million visitor gap, the deliberate protective friction of that 50-minute ferry ride, and the absolute lack of corporate mega hotels. As overtourism pushes local populations to the absolute breaking point across Europe, is the inconvenience of places like La Gomera actually the future blueprint for ethical, sustainable travel?
That's a profound question.
In the very near future, as unmanaged crowds destroy the places we love, will we simply have to start paying in time, effort, and logistical friction to prove we actually deserve to visit pristine environments? Are the days of frictionless, unearned access to paradise finally over? If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.